2 champions have been... Wait, what's that? 3? I thought it was supposed to be 2. There was a tie? Okay, whatever you say. 3 champions have been crowned. Plus, how does Tori do that with her hair? Derek comes up clutch. Bananas gets some solo R&R. Michele shines in defeat. Jordan dominates, and this monumental and very long season comes to an end. It's the Challenge 40 Battle of the Eras, episode 19, aka the finale recap, coming up right now. What up, my fellow challenge lovers? Welcome to The Challenge Historian, where we dive deep into all things MTV's The Challenge, past, present, or future. If it's happening in the Challenge universe, we are here to document it, all 19 episodes and counting of this monumental 40th season. I am your host and dedicated Challenge historian, Jacob Hollaball. Thank you so much for being here with me for the 19th, nay, the 20th time. Well, I did miss those couple of episodes. So thank you for being here yet again to end this season of Battle of the Eras, though there will be one more podcast specifically dedicated to this very season. This long season, 19 episodes later, 20 when you count the episode 0, which you know if you've been listening the whole season, we do. 20 episodes later, this monumental season, season 40, Battle of the Eras, is in the books. We have champions. 3 of them, not just 2 as we thought we would have, a tie. Lots to talk about, obviously. Honestly, much more to talk about than we thought going into this episode. We thought this would be a very quick topic tonight, discussing the couple winners that we thought we were going to have, and instead it may be normal length podcast episode tonight, where I thought it was going to be way on the short side with not a whole lot to go through, but there is things to go through. And quick programming reminders before we get to all of this finale, that is that at the end, if you stuck around after the credits rolled on the Battle of the Eras finale, you got to see the first airing of the All-Stars 5 trailer, which I haven't checked, but I'm sure is now immediately up on YouTube and social channels. If you didn't stick around to watch it and want to, go do so. It looks amazing. We will be talking about All-Stars 5 very soon, and by very soon I mean next week. Next Wednesday, I'm going to do the All-Stars 5 preview. That'll give you 2 weeks to listen to that, digest that before going into All-Stars 5. And then that will push our Battle of the Eras full season recap and awards back an extra week to Thursday, the 23rd. So 2 weeks from when you're listening to this at the earliest, probably tomorrow, Thursday. 2 weeks from now. And that would be then after we have watched both, I assume there's 2 episodes of the reunion. So if there's anything learned in there, we'll be able to add them in. So next week, we're doing All-Stars 5 Rivals preview on Wednesday. That'll come up sometime on Wednesday. I'm not sure exactly when. I'll probably record that day. So middle of the day, afternoon, sometime then. And then the following week on Thursday, the 23rd, Battle of the Eras, one more time, full season recap and awards. And then the following week, Wednesday night, the 29th, will be All-Stars 5, Episode 1. We will be recapping every Wednesday night throughout that season. So that is the upcoming schedule. As for tonight, I'm going to run through each one of the checkpoints that they did in this episode very quickly. Those will be extremely brief. You won't even need to really jump around in the timestamps. It's going to go quick right through those. And then once we have hit all of them and talked about each one, we will discuss all 8 of the finishers, mostly talking about the winners, talking about the karma points, talking about the fact that we have a tie and 3 total winners. All of that will be discussed. Each individual of these 8 competitors will be at least mentioned, though obviously Jordan, Jenny, and Rachel will get the lion's share of that discussion, and Michele throw in that group as well. So that's the plan. Thanks as always for being here. Subscribe, follow, rate, review, all that good stuff. And as always, either comment below if you've got some opinions or want to chat via the YouTube comments if you're watching there, or always, if you want to get in touch, the DMs are open at Challenge Historian on Instagram. Without further ado, let's dive in. Episode 19, the finale, Battle of the Eras. Here we go. We pick up where we left off last week, which is with the overnight checkpoint. 30 minutes on of counting coins, 30 minutes of singing, 30 minutes of counting, 30 minutes of singing until you are done counting. Closest count wins. Jenny had the right strategy here. I think I said that last week, but when she started to lose it, I think I said the best, you might as well try to just get some sleep. Like, just throw a wild guess. And she claims, she wasn't even like counting. She just started putting them in. She was clearly still counting because she actually gets third closest. She was closer than Derek, who won for the men. And yes, this whole the women smoking the men theme was brought up a lot via confessional throughout this final. Maybe or maybe not. I will discuss that later. But on this particular one, it was true. Jenny gets third for the women, but third overall. So she actually did a good job and then got the most sleep, assuming you could get some sleep laying on the cold steel ground of the Sinister with people still singing in the background every 30 minutes for the next couple of hours. But I think it was 1:30, and then Tori, the last one, was at 4:30. So 3 extra hours, 2 extra hours over basically everyone else was a huge deal for her. I'm glad they made Bananas and Michele go sing again, even as someone who was rooting for Michele. And that would have helped, would have gone a decent ways for her potentially. Or I guess no, it was all on how close they got. Either way, a little extra sleep would have been good. But I'm glad the producer was like, nah, we called time. And both of you looked down and were like, I've only got 10 left. And even Bananas, we visual, like with the great camera work, we see him as they say time out loud is still like putting them in. And I thought in the initial moment, I thought this was going to turn into a bigger thing than it was. I thought he was going to finish putting them all in and be like, I'm done. And them have to decide. We said stop and you didn't. But then when he's like, but I've got 10 more over here, I was like, okay, great. And I was very glad that they stuck to the rules that were clearly laid out. And we actually got to see, it wasn't like we didn't, there's a version of this where we don't hear them say time, or, there's still maybe a version of this where we don't perfectly trust the timing that they show us. So like now it's 1:30, now it's 2:30, whatever. I actually did in this instance, I like fully trusted those were accurate. And I love that we actually get to see the moment and hear and witness like the interaction with production. And I'm glad they stuck to their guns and were like, I'm sorry, you've got to go sing again. The rules are the rules. And this is the stage we're on to. And then third and finally, this is the best part to point out that Tori had the hardest final. And I will bring this up again later when discussing everyone's finish, but it should be remembered. Tori did 3 hours, like 3 hours and 15 minutes, whatever they ended up doing, her and Kara, of treading water the night before from like it was dark. So even if it's sunset earlier there, I don't know what sunset time in Vietnam, whenever they filmed this was, but let's call it 6. Let's go way on the early side, call it 6. Okay. They started that well after sunset. Let's say they started at 7 and went till 10:15. They started at like 6 or 7 in the morning. The next morning, she had done 3 hours and just completely exhausted. And so she had the hardest final already just by doing that, which I know, avoid the last elimination, and then you don't have to. That is part of the game, certainly, not like trying to make excuses for her. But then also part of the game, she was the slowest counting and ends up staying up by far the longest of everyone. And so just all in all, incredible performance just getting through this. I kind of thought she was being serious or maybe testing the waters with what's the reaction going to be when she said she wanted to quit the next morning, and got a very stern response from TJ and everyone else being like, shut up, you're not going to do it. And so, she just moved on. I think I want to say that was maybe actually testing the waters of like, would anyone be encouraging me by chance? Okay, no. Okay, I'll keep going. But the only final thing I'll say about this, spent way too much time on it, but I do got to say it again. It came up on Ride or Dies over and over because they did the exhausting 100-hour 4 days, just completely inexplicably. This isn't that entertaining, or like, what are you doing to these people final? Remember that 100-hour final? And there was multiple comments of how good Tori's hair kept looking like each day. Somehow like she just looked fantastic. Her hair looked fantastic. And people were like, were they giving you product, or like what was going on? It happened again. I don't know. Maybe it was just me. But I was just like, how does her hair look great again at the end of this? Is just this Tori just has something up her sleeve in a final. She comes out of the overnight every final being like, I don't know how, but I put myself together really well here the next morning, even if I'm exhausted, and going to continue to get last place in most of these checkpoints. Then we had the next checkpoint, the first of day 2, Submerging Terror, I believe was the correct name there. This is an incredibly cool A+ checkpoint. Incredibly hard, incredibly cool, very fun, entertaining to watch. It checked all the boxes of like just picture perfect challenge final checkpoint. Now, that is in a vacuum. There is still the issue, and I will do my best to just not really bring it up, or I'm not going to do a long rant about it because I spent basically the bulk of last week's episode doing 2 rants, one of which was on the fact that this whole final is just one long swim, and whoever's better at swimming, like this is more swimming than the rest of the challenge finales combined, and I don't like that. I think it was a bad idea, but that was last week's episode. You can go listen to that if you want. So there is some of that. Obviously, I would, I was like, gosh, this is really hard because of all the swimming they have to do for this checkpoint again. But in a vacuum, outside of the fact that I wish there would have been doing some non-swimming stuff here on its own individually, this is an unbelievably cool, unbelievably hard checkpoint. The going down what looked to be maybe 10-ish feet, which is plenty deep in water, and untangling and or breaking the box. I wanted, as usual, rules questions were, abound here in Challenge Historian HQ of like, so did they have to untie to a certain point? Was there one specific spot? Like they all were breaking it out. Was there one spot they were supposed to break? And could they have just broke it from the beginning? Did they have to untangle? Like I was a little confused about that. But it seemed like everyone kind of essentially did the same amount of work on that. So no harm done. And then they finally get to paddle. And I was glad that they got to paddle instead of swim. I'm glad that all this time on the water, like I still would have probably been like, this is too much paddling and too much swimming if they did 50% each during the final. But I would have felt a decent amount better about that. Just like 2 different skill sets here versus the one. So we get to see them do the one-time paddle. And then the thing I didn't think they took advantage of, they like showed a couple times, it clearly the Sinister, like they paddled a lot further than they swam. After they swam off the boat, Sinister took a little journey, and they did show shots each time that we were like, well, now we have to paddle back to Sinister, and they would show it moving. And so it was very clear, like it went way farther away than it was beginning, but they didn't like hammer that home. And I thought that was a funny thing and like a nice little twist to throw on them and like, beat them while they're down type of thing. So I liked that. I thought this was the best checkpoint of the entire final. Then you have the Sandbar Checkpoint. Absolutely love this one as well. They've done checkpoints like this in the past on multiple occasions where, how someone else is doing, where you are in the pecking order can have a real impact on where you will ultimately finish the checkpoint. Going way back to Duel 2 with a Rachel Robinson win, there was, you had to, at one point, it was individual the whole time. And then for one, you had to wait till like, if you're the woman that got there, like the first man that got there, you had to tie up and do a portion together. So someone's going to have to wait a little bit for the other person to arrive. Vendettas had a big famous-ish one, where you had to wait for someone to play the game with you. And then if one, you both got to leave when you were done, but one got a little bit of a disadvantage with the swords in the barrel type of thing. However that worked, I'm forgetting the specifics right now. So I like these where it's like, pending the order of you get here, you've got to play this game, and then you can either get out of here really fast or you could get really stuck playing this game, and ultimately you could get completely, the worst. Whoever gets last in this, it's a big disadvantage. You're in this case, you are literally guaranteed to lose this checkpoint. Completely, as Bananas, is literally not allowed to leave until Kyland's back. He is guaranteed 4th and then still has to do the swim. So I love this setup. I liked that it wasn't eating. I liked that they were like, we could throw you some electrolytes. We could have you sip on some coconuts and it'll just be funny and it'll kind of make the scene a little more funny. And I loved the design of this one. Maybe this one was actually my favorite over the last one. Day two, they really nailed day two. If day one would have like been on land and some running and some different things involved, and then at the end of day one, it would have been like swim out to that boat, and that's where you're spending the night. And then day two was like all this swimming and a little paddling. Could have been really, really perfect in my book. I loved day two. The swimming thing still upsets me, but I loved day two overall. But because they didn't eat anything gross, and at first they all thought they were about to, this was officially a final with no gross eating, which I'm okay with. I don't like need that in it, but it is a staple, and so it was an interesting choice for season 40 to not have that be a part of the final. But I'm totally fine with it. I've watched a lot of I've watched all these seasons many times over. I've seen a lot of montages of people puking and eating nasty stuff. I'm good, and so that's fine by me. Derek is correct here. When Michele proposes to him, can you let me win? At first second, you're like, okay, you guys are allies, and it's the women versus the women and the men versus the men. Like, sure. But after 1 second of thought, Derek thankfully comes up with the correct thing, which is like, yeah, I get it, and I would love to help you, but what ends up happening is ultimately, basically, it doesn't quite win it, but it is one of the ones where like he gets second and Bananas gets fourth because he beats Michele, and then Michele beats Bananas and makes him sit there and wait for Kyland and then ultimately lose and get fourth. And so, yeah, this still matters for my game. Yeah, I'm not going to catch Jordan. Okay, cool. You can catch those people. Okay, cool. If I let you beat me, then I might lose to Bananas and ultimately I'm done. And now like he gets second and I get third or fourth. And the whole thing flips. And with the karma points, I don't have the standings right in front of me. Maybe it doesn't ultimately change anything at all. Maybe it actually helps get production what they wanted with the karma points. We'll talk about that later. But he's right to not let Michele have that one. And it was awesome to then see it both work out for him and get to have Michele, as she loses those first three or whatever it was in a row, then beat Bananas and really cost him exponentially in this game. So incredible moment there. I do have one question though about Bananas at the end. One, great job by him. If there was anyone to get put in this spot, he's your number one draft pick from production standpoint of like, he'll find a way to give us something here. He knows it's a TV show. He'll ham it up a little bit. He'll have himself a good time. And he did. But I do have a question. When he does ultimately paddle back, one, did they make him swim all the way back? I assume so. I assume they would, the other cast would be like, hey, this is bullshit. Like, if we're still going to go, like, he's got to get as tired as we do, and we get this rest and everything else. So I assume he had to do the full swim back, but I assume he took his sweet time, knowing it didn't matter, and, the rest of them were conserving energy. But while he was swimming back, they show him holding his buoy and doing a little backstroke. And my whole thought that I don't think I brought up last week, and I'll bring it up here, is it seems like the rule was made clear that you couldn't hold onto your buoy, because there was no way they all went through this whole thing without anyone ever just holding the buoy and kicking, which would definitely be a strategy amongst all the swimming you're doing to like rest your arms, float a little bit, the whole thing. It seemed like those were there as like, that's a last resort safety situation. And maybe in this scenario, they were like, Bananas, it's fine. You're already in fourth. We just have to get you back. No one's going to care that much, and just go do it. But I had some questions as usual. Then the final checkpoint. I prefer a final checkpoint to be short and sweet, kind of a sprint. This one was just that, so I really enjoyed it. I think the final checkpoint, more often than not, has been that way, and I do think it just kind of should. It just, I don't know. It feels right to just kind of have that last one be really quick. One more last little gasp to get to the actual finish line for them, and this one was very much that. So in that way, I really like it. There wasn't a lot to it, and I'll take it that way. Jenny does lose it here, though. Ultimately, Jenny, they focus in for a reason, that she can't find the token, and that slows her down getting out of there. And then Tori passes her or just goes a little faster than her on the scooter thing, which, I mean, I'm sure they're all exactly the same scooter. And I guess, like, size matters, how much you weigh matters. I can't imagine Tori and Jenny weigh that much different than each other. If was there technique to it? Was there, like, how narrow, thin, pencil like can you get behind it to, like, get less drag? I don't know. But going slightly slower, finding that token, and on that scooter ultimately cost Jenny a lot of money. And then we have our winners. I, like they did in the show, am going to talk about the men's side first. And here I'm just going to talk about Jordan, and then we will talk about the other three as a group, because Jordan gets the win in absolutely dominant fashion. He won basically every checkpoint. He could have done so in even faster fashion than he did. I mean, I know he says in this episode, I was, really tired, beat up. These swims are taking a toll. They certainly were. It's incredibly difficult, even for someone who competes in Ironmans, not that, long off, was training for those prior to this season, not that far behind, and still does endurance stuff and keeps himself in tip-top shape and cardio. So if he needed to, if there was a Wes there, a Tyson there, any other male with a real swimming background or real endurance background there, I am positive Jordan could have gone much faster. I am positive that, the one checkpoint we see him do where he says, I'm taking it easy for a second, and then shoot, everyone caught up to me, I got to get moving again. He was not like taking it easy the whole time, but he definitely is knowing his leads the whole time. He could have been even more dominant than he was, is what I'm saying. And I'm also not fully ready to say it. We'll talk about it maybe in a couple of weeks. Maybe we'll revisit it in the off season of the flagship show here. But Jordan's probably the GOAT now. He's probably the best. I think that's going to be a conversation people are having. I think a lot of people are going to start saying that is true. And for the time being, I am not going to officially say one way or the other. If you've long-time listeners or even not that long listeners, I've probably mentioned it throughout every season. I am on the Bananas side of things in the Bananas versus CT debate on the men's side, who is the best male player ever. But I've long thought Jordan was much more in third than anyone else, and was like very clearly in third and very clearly the only other person worth discussing with these two. And we might have gotten there. He's done 10 seasons, not counting the ones that don't count, Champs vs. Stars, All-Stars, and World Championships both count. 10 seasons, 5 wins, 50% win rate, which is insane. He's 12-6 in elimination record, which isn't as good as it feels like it should be, but is still very, very good in challenge history. 12-6 is very, very good. Multiple of his losses are super memorable. Free agents, he loses by drawing all the kill cards and losing bananas. It's super memorable. It's a horrible way to go out. It's a dumb way to go out, but it's very memorable and very entertaining. Total madness. He goes out by getting thrown in to pole wrestle versus Fessy, tearing his shoulder, doing the confessionals after, super duper high on Novocaine or whatever. He's told the story before. I think it was in the Challenge Untold History thing, where the producers were giving him his props, and he talked about, like, after that injury, the job's not done, you got to do your confessionals or whatever. Super impressive in its own right. But even his losses are memorable. He's won 5 out of the 10 times he's been there. And if you wanted to do the how many are teams versus not or whatever, one of them was a team one, and it might have been the most impressive win in the history of the show, Jordan's War of the Worlds 2 win. So unbelievable. And honestly, in the just who's the best cast member ever, which is a very different discussion, he's honestly not far off in that category either. I don't think CT can ever be topped in that discussion. CT is maybe the best reality television cast member ever on competitive reality television, or even otherwise. He's in the discussion of all types of reality television, but certainly in the challenge world, I don't think CT as a cast member can be touched. He is absolutely across the board 100% of everything you would want in a cast member over his arc and his career on this show and his life in and out of this show. And there's a couple other OGs like a Coral and some others that probably are above Jordan too, as far as like pitch perfect cast member, everything you could ever want. But Jordan's in that conversation too. And him winning in such dominant fashion is one more reason why I'll bring it up again one more time. It's why I wish this final wasn't just all swimming, that Jordan is really good at or has this big advantage over everyone. And so like he deserves this to be said, one of, if not, it's not the most dominant win ever. But it's one of them. It's way up there. It is a super dominant win. But I wish it wasn't this thing that he was so much better than the three he went up against because I think, and I am a big believer in any style, any condition final right now today, he's smoking everyone. He's smoking everyone. I think that. I think he's at least heavily favored. I'm sure he wouldn't guaranteed, obviously, no guarantees, anything. Other things would be a little bit more even with some of the other competitors, but he's the heavy favorite in any type of final, any type of condition, any type of asks that they have of them. And so I think it would have been, made it even more legendary if they would have had a different setup, had a more mixed final that he still, I think, would have dominated and put the stamp on this career thus far. I was loved hearing him say, I'll be back for season 50. That's great to hear. We will discuss this full season in all-time perspective on the season wrap-up. And again, sometime in the future, sometime in the off-season of the flagship show, and eventually there will be, I believe, after All-Stars 5, an actual break in viewing of whatever season they end up filming next. We will discuss the greatest of all time, and we will hash that out, and Jordan very well may come out at the top of the pack. Now let's talk about Derek, Bananas, and Kyland, the rest of the men's side. Derek first. He gets second place. It is absolutely amazing. He had an amazing final. He came up clutch over and over in those swims. He won more of the kind of head-to-head, were within range of being able to pass each other here, swims versus Bananas, in two people who seem to be pretty equal as far as like experience and comfort in the water. So he came up clutch, and he came up clutch on a couple of the puzzles, on the math question, everything about it. A great final all the way through, a very deserving second place, an absolutely great season all the way through. Yes, as many people have benefited from before, and as he has been on the losing end of before, got a good draw as far as who was in the house and where his relationships might lie, or which relationships could be budding allies for him. But he played all those, he got some good cards, and then he played them masterfully, had a fantastic season, had a great final. It was a great story to have on this big monumental season, have this quote unquote underdog story, and have Derek be the one getting second, beating Bananas in the final is a great thing. Even if the underdog tag and how much they talked about it throughout the season is a little bit of a complicated discussion of like, in some ways it was like underappreciated, in some ways it was overappreciated. So on the balance, it's probably exactly right. That's maybe a conversation for the season wrap up as well. Amazing season, amazing final from Derek. Thrilled for him. Love that he got this second place victory. And then there's Bananas. He got third. Still an extra $25K for his pocket. No shame in that. Still a top 3 finish on a 20-person season as far as, his half of the bracket there goes. And he's still the one waving the flag at the end after it's all said and done. He's the one doing the funny side quest camera work throughout the finale and throughout the season. He's the one with an alliance named after him, even though that alliance is driven and run by all the women that make it up. And then he's really just the beneficiary. He is still, and probably always will be, the challenge. He is the show. He is just fully ingrained as the biggest part of the fabric of the show. He just might not be the GOAT anymore, but that's okay. Even if he's not, he's got 7 rings. He's been on 20 some odd seasons of the show. He's made a living, a career, and it's still a really good showing for him to come on this season and end up building a really good alliance, playing the game in a really good way, making some quality television, and getting himself a 3rd place finish. And then there's Kyland, an impressive showing as far as how he handled getting the worst hand possible in a final. To show up to your first final, it's going to be tough sledding, not having done it, not having the experience, and then for them to be like, and oh yeah, your number one weakness is swimming. Guess what? This entire final is just swimming. You are going to swim a very long distance for every single checkpoint, all 7 of them. Good luck. And he handled it really, really well. And I thought he had great perspective, and I thought he had a great season all the way through. And I think he's a great competitor and a great cast member. I thought that coming off of last season, and I certainly still believe that to be true now. The only bummer here is I do factor in how much these people are getting paid per episode, which we don't know that, but we do know the longer you've been on the show, or the bigger name you have, you end up getting more and more and more for your appearance fee, and those appearance fees are per episodes. And so the Johnny Bananas of the world are thrilled to make the final and not win. He is getting paid handsomely for being there in 19 episodes, plus the launch one, plus the 2 reunion. That's a 22 episode paycheck coming his way. And I'm pretty confident he gets paid as much or more than anyone else on this show. And Kyland, in only his 3rd season, is not pulling in quite that check level. And so that $25K for 3rd place, it was a little bit of a bummer for me. I would have liked to see him pass Bananas. Just that $25K will go a little further for him versus whatever Bananas is getting from the episodes. Like the $25K is still $25K. Amazing. Not turning it down. But we know those 2 checks aren't the same. So it was a little bit of a bummer for me that Kyland couldn't find a way to get all the way up there to 3rd place. Now for the real discussion, the thing you've probably been waiting for. Maybe you used the timestamps and you just skipped straight ahead to this. If so, so be it. Welcome back to the show. Let's talk about the women. Let's talk about the karma vote. Let's talk about that we have a tie and 2 champions on the women's side. So Jenny and Rachel win. Michele gets 3rd. Tori gets 4th. This is what we all came here to talk about. And I do not like it. We're going to start there. We're going to preface it with that. I know last week's episode was pretty whiny, was a lot of complaints, and that was basically the whole podcast. And yes, there is about to be a lot more complaining here. I don't like this. I think this is going to be divisive. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of people who are like, I don't care, or I love it. I think those people will be out there. I do not think I will be alone, though, in thinking that this is ridiculous and that I do not like how they handled this or how this turned out. But I also know that me having this strong of a reaction is a great thing for the show. So good for them. You did it. But I'm angry and I'm upset. Okay. I said how I felt about the karma vote last week. I hate it. I feel more strongly this week than I did even last week, because I think, as I said last week, what they really wanted, if you could have asked them when they came up with this idea and they decided to do this, and you told them, what is your hope? What is your goal? What would be the scenario that would be the best case version of this? They would have said, the best thing that could ever happen is if we instituted this and Johnny Bananas won, but because of it, he got bumped to 2nd or even 3rd or even 4th. Like if we could take money from Johnny Bananas and have that moment, that little bit of vindication, we could play the clip of him taking it from Sarah, and then we could be like, and now you're losing it. It has finally come back. That would have been what they wanted. That's what they wanted to happen. And obviously they did not get that, but that was the dream when they created this. I believe that. And I get that dream scenario sounds pretty fun and sounds like great television, and a lot of fans would love it, even if they could take truth serum and say, I don't like how this happened, but if that would have been the way it happened or who it happened to, fantastic, absolutely love it, great TV. And even him having made as much as he's made off this show and been on forever, would have likely been like, I understand this is great TV and it's all okay. But Jenny and Michele getting burned by it, even if it's in favor of one of the most likable cast members of all time and a former dominant champion and still very dominant player in Rachel benefiting, it's not great TV to me. And I just am left feeling awful for Jenny and Michele. And honestly, awful for Rachel for now I'm sure she's going to have to speak about this plenty of times, be asked about it, and everything else. And so that part will not be fun for her at all. The money will be great. The title, added challenge champion, that'll be great. It will probably not be enjoyable for her to deal with this either. So let's run through all four of the women to discuss this more thoroughly. Jenny first, the winner. The winner of season 40 is Jenny. In my mind, she is the only female winner of this season. She won 4 out of 7 checkpoints and got second, third, and fourth in the other 3. First, second, third, fourth. That is a dominant winning performance in a final. There should be no taking away from the person who wins 4 out of 7. If it would have been she won 4 out of 7 and then she got last in the other 3. But she got first, second, third, fourth. That's dominant. That should get her a win. There should be no twist, no anything that could change that outcome of her winning. She kicked ass throughout the final. And she ends up losing just shy of $160,000 because of this. And that's pre-tax. They obviously don't even get to keep all of the $237,500 that they get or whatever it is split up between them. Now most of that ends up going towards taxes and stuff when you win these types of shows. And so she lost so much money because of this thing. And I just feel awful. It's fantastic that it was, her in the house BFF, someone she really looked up to and loved. And so she could have a great time with it, feel awesome about it. She's won before. She's got a good thing going with her fitness business in real life. Like, she's good. It's all going to be okay. And I'm glad she could, have the reaction she did and be so thrilled about the tie and everything else. But ultimately, I still am like, this sucks. Like, she's the winner. She should get the $400,000. And also keep in mind, she was the one who lost out big on Total Madness. And if you're like, what do you mean? How did she won Total Madness? How did she lose out big? That is the season. I've referenced this many times over, but when people say that, some have in the fan community, that Jenny is like a boring cast member, or they understand why she wasn't invited back right away, even after winning, I remind people that they literally edited out the main storyline of Total Madness because they decided to edit the show last second as it was airing to remove Dee from being on camera ever because of the insensitive comments and jokes that she made on her social media, which I thought then was a bit of a stretch and maybe not worth ruining your season of television over. And I certainly still feel that way today. And by doing that, the main storyline of that season was Jenny, Rogan, and Dee. And those three, and Jenny and Rogan ran that game and everything else. And they had to cut all of that out because it involved Dee. And thus, by the end of the season, she's won. And it's like, we didn't really seem to we still got a good amount from her. They could still show most of her and Rogan's side of things, kind of running the game. But she got edited out. And suddenly it was like, this woman won. And in the first edit of the show would have also been the downright MVP of the season, dominating the storylines, dominating the game itself, everything about it. But editing it out, she loses big time by that from what she is perceived to bring to the table. And then she's the one that, after winning, dominating that final, dominating that season, was just not asked back for multiple seasons in a row, was then brought back first as an alternate, which is kind of a slap in the face, and then finally got brought back and kicks everyone's ass again, just as she had done before. She's a 2-time champ, no matter what, and a 2-time individual champion in my mind, an incredible cast member. Now, on to Rachel. Rachel, I could not say I could name every positive adjective in the world. I could open Merriam-Webster, any other dictionary brand, not sponsored here by them, but that's the big one, I think, maybe still. I could open the dictionary and list every single adjective, positive adjective for a competitor or a cast member or a human being, and they would all be appropriate for Rachel Robinson. She is amazing. She is the best. I love her as a cast member. I love her as a person. I love her as a competitor. I think she's one of the best competitors we've ever seen. She, in the Duel 2, had one of the most dominating finals performances we've ever seen. And this season, regular season, she had one of the best games we've seen in a long, long time. There's too many regular season games to think right now to say it was one of the best ever. There's a lot of amazing seasons out there, but this one was right up there. A+ work all the way through. So, preface all of that with this, and gotta say, none of anything I'm about to say now is about Rachel in any way. She didn't create these rules. She didn't come up with the karma vote. What is she supposed to do? Tell TJ, no, that doesn't seem fair. I'm not a champ. I will not take the money. Like, no, of course not. Of course not. Take the money. Take the title. Hell yeah. Great for her. This has nothing to do with her. This is about production and these decisions. It is not about her, who is now a 3-time champion and gets that money, and that's fantastic. And she did nothing wrong, obviously. But she got 4th, 3rd, 3rd, 1st, 3rd, 3rd, 2nd. She got 3rd or 4th in a 4-person checkpoint 5 of the 7 times. She did not come in the top half 5 of the 7 times. That's not a championship performance in the final. I don't feel good saying that performance is the same as Jenny's performance, and now they're tied and they're both champions. That looks like a 3rd place performance to me, which is what it was based off the tally. Again, she played the best social game, had as hard of a road as anyone this season, so that does temper the feelings a little bit. Again, of like this situation couldn't have picked, like, for them to have people like me get over being mad about this. This is the number 1 best person who played the best possible season to make me be like, get over it. She deserves it. It's Rachel. Did you watch the season? Everything she went through, the last one of Era 1, all by herself early on, played the best social game, all the deals, everything else. Like, yeah, I get it. But I still got to go objectively with, I just hate that someone who got 4th, 3rd, 3rd, 1st, 3rd, 3rd, 2nd is tied to win with someone who got 1st 4 times, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. It doesn't feel like the same thing to me. But even if we want to have these karma points, let's stop here to talk about the fact that it's a tie. The karma votes are there. They're there. Okay, I got it. And they caused a tie. They screwed over Michele. They bumped Rachel up, and Rachel is now tied with Jenny for 1st. Since when do we tie? Since when is there not a tiebreaker of some kind, some way? And there was an easy one. It was sitting right there. It was sitting right there. It was so easy to do. You say, Rachel, you moved up. Incredible job. I'm sorry, Michele, you were bumped down. Rachel and Jenny, you were tied. 23 apiece. We did not expect this, but we did write a tiebreaker in. And that tiebreaker is who won the most checkpoints. You tied on total points. So the clear thing from a sports perspective would be the easiest thing. If there was a tiebreaker here, it would very straightforward. I don't see anyone who would come up with a more obvious and better way than, like, if you tied on total points, who won the most? And Jenny, even with, if you counted the 2+2 for Rachel for winning the karma vote, give her 2 checkpoint wins, total wins would then be 3 because she won 1 and you got 2 more for the karma. Jenny won 4. Jenny would get it. Rachel would get 2nd. And I would still feel awful for Michele that she got passed up, but I'd feel like, okay, that's, at least we still have one champion, and the person who won the thing by themselves. So I feel like that was just sitting there for them too. Let's move on to Michele and Tori here to round this out. Michele, I'm very aware that I am extremely biased. She's my favorite cast member of the Era 4, probably the Era 4 women. And I think she is probably the best cast member of the Era 4 women that we have going right now. And I also know, I'm well aware, she won $1 million on Survivor before. I don't think you get anything for even on season 40, getting to the end of Survivor the second time. And she's been on enough seasons of the challenge now that I think she's probably getting a half decent paycheck for making it to the end of the season of the challenge. I hope she is again, because I think she's the best Era 4 cast member. They should be paying all of them plenty enough to keep them coming back, especially the really good ones. But losing 50K still sucks because a bunch of people didn't vote. And I will go back, by the way, side tangent here. I will go back through and watch that montage. Maybe Challenge Stats will do it for us and do a much better job. What the hell's with Casey giving everyone a 1, first and foremost? And I'll see who gave who what. They gave us a good amount of data there. They showed us like 8 or 9 people per person what they got vote wise. And I'll go back and see which ones I was surprised by or not. But the 50K is one thing for Michele, who I think is doing fine. And ultimately, again, 50K is 50K. It's a hell of a lot of money, no matter who is getting it. But I think she'll be fine. But the ability to say you got second when you've been questioned the way she has at least felt like, if not actually been questioned by people and fans, other cast members, and obviously, as we saw this season, for not the first time, herself, of like, do I belong here? How good am I compared to these people? To be able to say you got second and beat Tori and Rachel in a final, and then that gets taken away, and you like kind of have to feel a little like, I beat Rachel though, and she won. Like, what the hell? Like, she gets all this much more than me and is a champion again. Like, I beat her. Like, what are you even talking about? That still sucks. And so, in my mind, she still got second place on the season with probably, not even probably, the best female cast ever. The best female cast ever, the most competitive female cast ever. Best cast means something slightly different than competitive wise. This is the most competitive female cast we've ever had, and it was 20 to boot, the biggest we've ever had. And she got second out of all those people. Yes, she, like Jordan, greatly advantaged from this being a full-on just who can swim the best final, and her having some background in swimming. Then finally, we have Tori. I will now admit something that I have kept from you all season long, and I feel bad about it, but I did keep it from you, and that is I had one spoiler this season. I said I was spoiler-free, and I was 99% true. I knew one single spoiler from about the midway point of this season on, and that was that I knew Tori got last in the final. I just knew I didn't know who else was there. I didn't know who beat her. I knew, though, she got last in the final because a couple of the spoiler accounts out there and other people then reacted to it. I have those muted most of the time, but people's reactions to it, and then I still end up coming across it. There was essentially a group of people, including some of the spoiler accounts and some of the other nameless Stan accounts, challenge accounts out there, that were celebrating, or when Tori would win something during the season would be like, yeah, I can't wait to watch her get last in the final though, or whatever. And I saw that a couple times. It was like, shit, okay, I got one spoiler. I know Tori makes the final, which sucked when she, went into elimination there at the end. I was like, I guess I know who wins this. But I hope those people, I know they won't, but I can still hope. A guy can hope. I know they won't realize how insanely dumb of an opinion that has been, and how insanely dumb of an opinion it is for anyone who thinks Tori is not extremely good at the challenge, an extremely good competitor, one of the best competitors ever, definitely probably the best of her era of the show. Is now her and Jenny are in a very strong argument here for best of second half, if we're going era 3 and era 4 here, because pretty much all the people you would throw in the best of all time are era 1 and 2 folks on the women's side, with Cara, Laurel, Rachel, Emily, Evelyn, Paula. Always put Paula in there, please, and thank you. Deserves to be in that combo. And then Tori and Jenny would be the new school entries into that list of best ever. And you're saying Jenny has 2 wins now. She's better than Tori. Tori beat Jenny in that hall brawl, and that still matters. And Tori, in my mind, is kind of gets like an asterisk bonus ghost win for War of the Worlds 2 a little bit of ways. But it's a dumb take if you think Tori is bad at this game or not insanely good at this game. She rocks at the challenge. She won the most dailies this season. She won more individuals than all the others combined. She is one of the best females in the history of the game, period. Her final, as we talked about earlier, way harder than everyone else's, coming off that swim to start, which is not an excuse. That is part of the game. This is not the first person who has ever been at detriment because of being thrown into the final elimination. That's why you want to avoid that. That is part of playing a good game. Don't end up in that one. It could really cost you in the final. I think it did cost her. I think if she wasn't in that, or just that was a day early or something like that, if she was coming in equally fresh, she's a decent swimmer. And I think she wouldn't have won. I do not believe. But it would have completely changed things. I think, because I think she would have moved up a place or two in a couple checkpoints, because I do think she was maybe the second best swimmer in a tight group, where Michele was the best, but was only a little bit better than the other three who all put up really good performances in the water. But I do think her even like moving one spot ahead, 2 spots ahead on 1 or 2 checkpoints suddenly throws these very tight standings into very, very different looking end. But that's why you got to stay out of those eliminations, especially that last one. It's a great season for her. It's another final, and I hope she comes back after a few season break that she said she's going to take. I think that's a good idea, but then I hope she comes back and whoops some more ass. And with that, that is somehow maybe the longest recap podcast of the season on these episode that potentially deserved the shortest one, with very little to talk about. Just these 3 people won. But I will finish by saying this. It happened. Pat myself on the back here. Second time in, I believe, 9 seasons of coverage. We've been doing this a minute now, 3-4 years at this point. Second season I have ever gotten my winners' picks right. Jenny and Jordan. Yes, I know Rachel is a champion there too. I picked 2 because we were told there would be 2 winners, and there probably should only have been 2 winners. So I still went 100% correct on my winners' picks. Jordan and Jenny. This was the best predictions I have ever had, when you throw in that I also got a bunch of the finalists right. I feel great about that. Again, I did have the one single finalist spoiler, Tori. I learned that mid-season, after I had already suggested that she would be there. So pat myself on the back. Good job by me. Good job by you if you had that. And great job, of course, by Jordan and Jenny and Rachel on becoming challenge champions for the 5th, 3rd, and 2nd time ever. We will be back again next week on Wednesday. All-Stars 5 Rivals preview next Wednesday. 2 weeks from now, on Thursday, the 23rd, we'll be back one more time. Battle of the Eras, full season recap and awards, who takes home the season MVP, what goes down at the reunions, all of that will be covered. And then 3 weeks from now, 3 weeks from tonight, All Stars 5 Rivals episode 1. If there is a Monday launch special, episode 0, we will cover it, of course. But otherwise, look for that season preview next Wednesday. And beyond that, have a great weekend. DMs are open. Subscribe, all that good stuff. Love you. Appreciate you. Talk to you soon. Peace.